So here's the video, part 2 of the extended response prompt and graphic organizer sheet. Remember that this video can help you with any extended response graphic organizer, but it happens to be for the story 7th grade internal conflict, but it could be for any extended response. The steps are the same. So in part 1, in my video in part 1, we went over how to do the topic sentence and the quotes. So if you need help with that, go back and find part 1. Okay. All right. So now part 2, remember that we have said in our topic sentence, hey, I say that there is internal conflict and it impacts the plot in this story. But really it's whatever. I say whatever the prompt was asked me about. And then in the purple, you found evidence, textual evidence that you found in the text. You found textual evidence to support what you said in your topic sentence. Now in the blue, you need to explain how the events in purple relate to, in this case, internal conflict and impact the plot. But really, it's whatever you were asked. So if it's actually about the theme and you are saying, like if I ask you the theme of a story and you say the theme is always give Miss Wainwright chocolate, that would be an interesting story. But anyways, if that's what you said the theme was, and these 3 quotes are all about how I am less likely to give homework or something if you give me chocolate, that's not true. It's just a silly example. But if that's what these quotes are about, or I'm more likely to give you free time, I'm less likely to give you homework, and I'm more likely to tell funny jokes. I don't know. If I have chocolate, then down here in blue, you are going to defend it. Basically explain how this quote proves that you are correct about your topic sentence. Remember that you always want to write or explain as if your reader hasn't read the text. So of course, I am your reader. And for some of the classes, Miss Agudelo is also the reader. And of course, we've read the stories, but you are writing as if we've never read the story, which means you need to give us some background. Explain a little bit, right? Especially if your quote says something like blah, 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 he did this. Well, you have to write down here in blue and explain who in the heck is he? Why did he do those things? And how does it impact the plot? So you might be writing in the blue boxes, you would write at least 1 sentence and possibly 2 to 3. I can't imagine you writing more than 3, but 1 to 2 sentences for sure. So in this case, we're talking about how internal conflict relates to or impacts the plot. And I have this example. Teresa, Victor said automatically. Some of the girls giggled. They knew he had a crush on Teresa. Well, this is an excellent quote, except that it's actually kind of confusing if my reader doesn't know what was going on in the story. And I am pretending like my reader didn't know, and so I have to explain it. So, Victor is in English class and has been asked to name a noun. So now I've provided some feedback. Now my reader's like, oh, okay, now I get why he's calling out a girl's name. When he calls out Teresa, which I'm going to spell correctly and capitalize, he is embarrassed, right? Embarrassment equals conflict. That equals internal conflict, which is what I'm talking about. He's embarrassed because it shows he is thinking about Teresa. Okay? Boom. I have explained in 2 sentences, not only some background on my quote, on what's happening in the story, but I've also been very, very explicit or very, very clear about how this quote relates to internal conflict and how it impacts the plot. I always like to say that you want to kind of like hit your reader over the head figuratively. Obviously, you're never hitting anybody. You want to hit your reader over the head figuratively with the correct answer. So make it really clear. This, you don't want to say every single time, this relates to internal conflict, because that would get very redundant. But make sure, in fact, now that I think about it, I don't really mention internal conflict here, and I probably should. Well, I don't mention internal conflict, but I say embarrassed. I think that's clear enough. But you're going to say a word like embarrassed or shy or sad, or you might even say internal conflict in each of your blue sentences or blue responses. Okay? So I've done that for this quote. Now you'll do it here for this quote and here for this quote, which I'm not going to do in this video because the video will be too long. So now we come down to our conclusion, okay? And in the conclusion, you're going to recap and review the ways that internal conflict impacted the plot. And the best thing I can say to you guys is that you can actually say, you can kind of restate your thesis, which is that internal conflict impacted the plot. If it's not left aligned, make sure it is. In 7th grade, internal conflict impacted the plot. And you could say, you could leave it as a sentence right there and say, or you could add and say, in many ways, right? So that's one way you could do it. You could also do it like this. Oh, it's trying to kick me out. Okay. So you could do it like that. Okay. So you could say, it just impacted the plot. You don't have to say in many ways. And then in the next sentence, you can explain how. Okay. So if now that you've said it, though, that it impacts in many ways, you might say, so if you do go with this one, that it impacts in many ways, you don't want to name them all again because you don't need to write the paper again, but you could do like comma, including when Victor is embarrassed in English class. All right? You could reference one of the things you talked about. Or you could come down here and make it 2 sentences. In 7th grade, internal conflict impacted the plot. And then you maybe will give like a recapping sentence. So if Victor had not had internal conflict, this story would not have had as much tension, or something like that. Or the reader wouldn't have been as interested in the characters, or it wouldn't have been as believable, or something like that. Okay, so this one is, somewhat can be a little bit of your opinion. Just make sure you don't say anything new. Okay, you don't want to introduce new information to the conclusion, and you definitely don't want to just repeat everything you said up here. Don't do that either. Okay? All right, now, once you finish this, here's what you're going to do. You are now going to start copying and pasting. All you have to do is copy and paste to create your extended response from your graphic organizer. Okay, so here's this extended response example. You're going to do yours above that. Okay, so create yours above that, and you're just going to copy and paste. So don't delete, don't cut and paste, copy and paste. Control-C, I'm going to go get my topic sentence. All right, and I'm going to make sure everything's left justified because that's how we write. But I'm going to tab, I'm going to indent, okay? And then I'm going to come get my second sentence, which is my first quote. I'm going to put that right here, right next to the word plot, okay? And every time I need to make sure I'm adding a space. Then I'm going to come get my third sentence, which is my blue explanation of that quote, okay? Then I'm going to come back up and get my second quote, okay? And my second explanation. and then my third quote, and my third explanation, and then finally my conclusion, until finally your paper looks like this. Okay? So, that should be read the way I've been teaching you guys. So, your paragraph should have a sentence that has some black, blue, and red. And then you might have a second sentence here. You don't have to. But then you should have a purple and a blue, and a purple and a blue, and a purple and a blue, and then a pink. So let's count how many sentences that would be. So that's 1. This one's optional, so I'm not going to count it. So 2, your first quote is your second sentence. Then your explanation is your third sentence. Okay. Then your second quote is your fourth sentence. Your second explanation is your fifth sentence. Your third quote is your sixth sentence. Your third explanation is your seventh sentence. And your conclusion is your eighth sentence. Now, that is 8 sentences at least. Because remember, we said that your blue might be 2 to 3 sentences. So if each one of these was 3 sentences, we're now adding like, I don't know, this is why I'm not your math teacher, but we would be adding like 2, 4, 6. We'd be adding 6 more sentences, like 14 sentences total. Okay. But the point is it should follow this color pattern. And if it's not following this color pattern, you can use it as a tool to figure out that you're doing something wrong. And I urge you to do that. Okay? All right. Reach out if you have any questions. Bye, guys.